Today on Polestar Stables, one more project you probably never think I'd finish. Pleasure Island is coming back in the shop. Almost there. Now, if you recall, this is Project Pleasure Island. It may or may not have hop, skipped, and jumped over a little cement barrier, across the sign, ripped the oil filter, and here we are with a car that needs an engine. Yep, still needs an engine. I have that engine. I pulled it last fall, maybe even last summer, from a junkyard, from a U-Picket, and I destroyed the torque converter that was in this car. I also destroyed the torque converter that was in the donor car. So I went to Transtar Industries over in Granville, Michigan. I found a torque converter, and now I'm ready to put this back together. First, I'm going to need to fill the torque converter and install that. Then just pop an engine in there, along with the radiator, the core support, the AC condenser, all the lines, wires, hoses, transmission and power steering coolers, exhaust. I'm practically done. I might have to watch some of my old videos and see how I tore it all apart, but it all goes back together one way. I'll be able to figure that out. I've got parts over there, 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 and an engine back there. I'm ready to find all of them, to put them right here, and get my shop back. It's been over a year since I tore this apart, and it's just time to roll on down the road. This is Project Pleasure Island. At some point here, our dipstick got broken. Probably not the end of the world. If I had to, I could swap out this valve cover. But I'm just going to try something here. Well, that worked. Luckily, I never returned the old engine that's seized up. So if I need any little parts like this here and there, I'll be able to replace what I need. Please forgive the background noise as the heat is on. I will be having a helper in a little while, and she's young and wants to be warm. So that's that. Well, I am putting a quart of transmission fluid in this torque converter, and it's a slow process. It's just got to burp through. Sometimes you can tilt it on its edge a little bit, but pretty much we just wait. You can see this little bearing material. It looks like a cam bearing. And that's what I messed up on the other torque converters. For whatever reason, the pilot on the other side of the torque converter that goes into the flywheel was just sticky. Which reminds me, I'll probably clean the end of the crankshaft, and I will put a little anti-seize in that belt. But I damaged that while this was trying to stay in the transmission here, but the engine was trying to pull it out, and it just got crooked while it was coming out of the car. So far we have about a half a quart in there. It'll be a bit, but that's okay. While that torque converter is burping, I went ahead and with a little wire brush on a drill, I cleaned that pilot very well and anti-seized it very well also. Now, one good thing to keep in mind is there are dowel pins aligning this engine and transmission together. So on the engine, I have a dowel on the back and I have a hole on the front. Quite conveniently, the hole in the transmission on the back is there and the pin on the transmission is on the front. So I have everything I need and not too much of anything. I am going to just clean up the holes, make sure that the dowels have something smooth to go into. I also cleaned up the input shaft and made sure that that was free of any debris. I also took the liberty to clean up that bell housing surface so that way I know that I will have a good mate between the engine and transmission. I put a little wheel bearing grease on that seal just to help guide it all along as I pop the torque converter in. And I am oh so close to being 1 quart down in my Valvoline Max Life transmission fluid jug. And sorting through my bin, I found my torque converter bolts and all my bell housing bolts as well. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you're doing an engine swap from a junkyard is you may have a couple extra bolts left over. This is a random bag of everything I just pulled from the junkyard. So if I need something that I'm missing or can't find, I can grab it from there. But when I'm all done, I may have borrowed something from there and don't have a use from something in this bin. I have officially gotten to the quart line. So all that has to do is burp down to the point where I can stand it up vertically and stick it on the transmission. Let's see if we can get this in here without spilling too much fluid. Now, there are 2 sets of splines here, and then there's also a flat where the pump engages the flats here. So there should be 3 positive engagements as this goes in. And it's pretty common to have to spin it to get all of those engagements. Now I can see that this pilot right here is about flush with this entire mating surface. So I can also see where the starter goes, that I'm confident it's all the way engaged. But I could measure just to make sure that I'm all the way in based on the back of the engine bell housing. So doing just a little bit of eyeball work here, I can see that I'm at about 7/8 of an inch from this rib here to here. So if I were to place this scale all the way in there, I'm actually at about 1 inch. So there's 1/8 of play there for engagement. So that tells me that my torque converter is all the way in, and I won't do any damage by putting the engine and transmission together now. One last thing. I've kind of got the torque converter bolts oriented that this bottom one is just a little bit forward of 6 o'clock. So it's at like 6:30, something like that. So I need to make sure that my torque converter is clocked about there so I can find it when I put it all together. So I need to be at about 5:30 so I can be at the front of the engine. Perfect. Now, it's always a good idea to keep your engine as low as possible while you're moving it so you don't tip over your engine hoist. All right, that's about where I need to be. Let's see if I can push it around. No staying clean today. Hi, Yada.
Hi. I was as fast as I could be, but that grilled cheese was super hot.
Okay. Right here, please. On the side of the jack, there's a little handle.
Huh.
Little gray handle.
This thing?
Yep. Will you please put it in that little hole on the side of the jack? Yep. And I need you to just very slowly pump until I say whoa. Okay, hold on. Up there somewhere, right there. The green, hand, like black and green. Yep. Please have that. Thank you. Way up top, like where the windshield and the hood meet, there's a pile of bolts. Can you reach 1 or 2 or 4 of them? So, we are bolting the engine to the transmission right now.
Uh-huh.
And there are dowels right there. You can see a dowel.
Yeah.
And so they are very, ooh, I don't like that.
Huh.
We gotta clean that bolt up. See how the threads are all boogered at the end? They're like full looking.
Mm.
Yeah, that ain't good. So we are aligning the engine and transmission with pilots, basically. That's what the dowels are, is they are making it so everything is perfectly in line. So the center line of the engine and the center line of the transmission are in harmony.
Mm-hmm.
And with any luck, it'll go together about like this without fighting me. You can see this gap getting smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Now, will you please put a little bit more pump on? Hopefully it'll make the top of that gap shrink. I can see that it's... Okay, we'll just leave it like that.
Okay.
I might have to go up there and tighten some things. Now, you can see this gap on the top. Does it look about the same or does it look bigger?
It's a little bigger on the top.
Okay.
Not a lot, but a little bit.
Okay, we're gonna use some of those up top then. Actually, I'll use one of those down here just to put it in the hole. I guess I'll take that one too. It looks like it's going real well together. Now I can see your nose holes actually right now.
Hello.
I can see the gap up there looks very close to the gap down here. So whatever one you're on, just keep going.
Okay.
When I see your gap closing, I'll tighten mine a little more. So yours about touching?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So anywhere you find bolts that are out, make them go in.
Oh, there's another one right there. They're all over the place.
They're all over the place. Somewhere. Right there.
Oh.
Okay.
That's like the size of my fist.
Oh.
Maybe bigger.
Okay, this is the torque converter. I think I might have just found it. There's 3 bolts that I have a little tiny access hole here that I have to get to bolt the internals of the engine to the transmission. The parts that spin, we have the cases bolted together, but now we have to make the...
There's another hole here with no thing in it.
Oh no. We're gonna have to find another bolt. We have the engine and transmission bolted together. The starter is in. The torque converter is bolted to the flex plate. And our upper motor mount is back in place. Don't forget your ground straps. The front exhaust manifold, the alternator, the AC compressor, and way back there, the power steering pump are in place. There's the power steering pump, and at the top there's that support tab for the pressure hose. And that little support tab likes to kind of get hung up on the back of the block. And there's nothing you can do to force that pump in place without moving that tab out of the way. I mentioned a ground wire here. Also on the transmission side of the block, there is another ground wire there. Both grounds are important for different reasons. Every ground needs to be in place for everything to work properly.